Happy Monday. Welcome inside Mr. Small's Theater. I am very glad to be back after a week off here on Gike's Got Game. Brian Crawford's alongside. We're looking forward to a fast-paced, hopefully entertaining hour of sports-ish talk. Yes, it'll be mostly about sports, obviously, as it usually is here on Gike's Got Game. But at the same time, I like to take a different perspective, maybe zoom out a little bit more. And there's no better time of the year, my friends, to zoom out than right now, because if you're just talking about the big three teams here in town, there wasn't a lot going on over the past 2 weeks. The Penguins, yes, they were playing as part of the midseason stretch here of the NHL's regular season, but at the same time, they also had the league-mandated 1 week off period. You want to call it a bye week, you want to call it some downtime, whatever you want to say. They weren't playing very many games since the last time that I was in this studio talking to you. And then they had the All-Star break and the All-Star game. But I will talk about the All-Star festivities and how they were very much life-affirming for me. I think it was a very encouraging NHL All-Star weekend if you're just a hockey fan, but also if you're a Penguins fan, and especially a Sidney Crosby fan. Later in the hour, too, it's Super Bowl week. So last weekend was the Pro Bowl and nothing else if you're into football, and I know many of you are. This week, of course, will be more exciting with the championship game on the doorstep here coming up in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm going to tell you how I've come completely full circle, well, at least half circle, if you want to say. If you turn one way and you turn back the other way, that's 180 degrees. So it's not full circle, right, because I'm not back to my old perspective. I'm completely turned in the other direction, back toward the screen behind me. On the New England Patriots, over the course of the past 18 years, so call it 2 decades, I've gone through a transformation on them. That'll be later on in this hour, too. And, well, I mentioned the Penguins, mentioned the football situation. The Steelers, of course, have sat out the playoffs for the first time in a while. So it's been quiet in that regard. And across Major League Baseball, it's been very quiet this offseason. Another very tame and tepid hot stove for the 2018-19 offseason. And, of course, the Pirates are never very active in that anyway, so it's not like Pirates fans have had a big adjustment. But there was some action, at least in terms of the fan experience this past weekend, as Pirate Fest returned to PNC Park for the second consecutive year. Good move from the ball club. I think I enjoy that situation, that whole event, better at PNC Park, even though you have to bundle up. It's not like you get to spend the whole time indoors in the warmth of the David L. Lawrence Convention Center like you used to, or going way back, the Carnegie Science Center or places previous that it was held. But that was maybe the only uplifting part of Pirate Fest, as we got more and more of the same, and that's what I'm going to start this week's show with. But not before reminding you that you can find me on social media, Matt Gajtka, MattGajtka. Yes, I spell it quick because I've been spelling it my whole life. That's my Twitter handle, no underscores, no spaces in between. And I'm on Facebook. And if you are watching on Facebook, hello out there in Zuckerberg land, the River's Edge Facebook page broadcasts this show as well as my own page, Matt Gajtka Media. So I'm looking forward to seeing if any of you have any updates on your sporting life or any kind of questions or observations on the topics I'm discussing this week. So I look forward to interacting with you over there. And that's probably the easiest way to get to me during this hour is to leave a comment on Facebook. And again, this is just our second Monday episode ever of Gike's Got Game. We moved it from Friday to Monday, so now we're part of a power-packed Monday morning lineup here on the River's Edge at riversedgepgh.com, as my engineer right now will become the host in just about 55 minutes' time. Brian Crawford will be hosting his River Talk program. I suggest you stick around for that. And that way I'm just the warm-up act. And what better time to warm up than maybe the coldest week of the year as well in Pittsburgh. So as I was saying, Pirates fans had to bundle up to get to Pirate Fest this past weekend. You're never going to complain. At least I don't complain about going to PNC Park, even during the off-season, even when we're in the dead of winter, maybe even especially when we're in the dead of winter, because it provides hope that the winter will someday end. And all those fancy and, romantic tropes and cliches about baseball, they do apply in the dead of January as much as they do in July, because we have something to look forward to if you are a baseball fan. And I remain a baseball fan. Against all odds here in Pittsburgh, I'm 33, about to be 34 years old. I will be 34 on opening day. I've seen precisely 3 Pirates winning teams that I remember, and they occurred just this decade, 13 through 15. So I'm like a lot of people my age where the thoughts of winning baseball, of competitive baseball, are strictly a bonus when you go to PNC Park or when you invest emotionally in the Pirates, as I have since I was about 11 or 12 years old. So I don't remember the early 90s teams. I don't remember a Pirates franchise that was not encumbered by market forces, and a lot of that is on Major League Baseball, right? And I'm never going to take Major League Baseball off the hook in the fact that they've allowed their sport to fall back, to fall behind, in my opinion, the thinkers at NFL headquarters, the thinkers at NBA headquarters, the thinkers even at the sometimes backward NHL headquarters. Even hockey got it right. And you could say hockey got it right despite itself in terms of its economic system, because the league may not have survived. They may have lost several teams if they continued on without a salary cap. The Penguins may have folded or moved 2 or 3 times over by now if there was no hard cap in hockey. And so I don't give too much credit to the powers that be in hockey for that, because it was almost a necessity. And, of course, we lost the entire 2004-05 season because of it. But after all that pain, I will give Gary Bettman and his people credit. They have helped transform the sport into something that's very appealing, that's much more appealing than it ever was. But in baseball, not only are people talking about pace of play, are they talking about too many strikeouts and the fact that the game isn't as compelling as a product, which is concerning. There's still this thought that the teams that are on the lower end of the revenue spectrum don't have much of a shot, and you don't get that in really any other sport. So that is only there's only one entity that you can blame for that, and that's baseball, and that's MLB. And going back to the Bud Selig days, probably could have really dropped the hammer there and tried to get that hard cap. But again, I guess that's water under the bridge, and we'll look forward to the future here. But in terms of the Pirates, that explanation just isn't good enough for a certain segment of the fan base. And I think the Pirates still, at least at the top, or at least in their front-facing people, like your Neil Huntingtons, the general manager, like your Frank Coonelly's, he's the team president, they were out in front of Pirates fans and season ticket holders this past weekend, again, doing the fan Q&A that so many fans like and find cathartic, because they can, in some ways, complain directly to the people that they feel are worthy of complaining about. And I'm not going to say that I don't enjoy that in some form or fashion. It's in some ways satisfying to see fans play media, or at least fans get that opportunity that they rarely do. So I give Messrs. Coonelly and Huntington and Clint Hurdle, the Pirates manager, credit for sitting in front of a very passionate portion of their fan base and taking it on the chin there. But with the way that the rhetoric continues to flow from especially Huntington and Coonelly toward the fan base, there's a part of me that says the Pirates still don't get their fans right now, and they haven't gotten their fans, and they lost a certain portion of their fan base 3 years ago. The 2015 into 16 offseason, when they really did nothing, they sat on their hands. They said, well, maybe our internal guys will get better. We're not going to boost our payroll spending commensurate to the number of people who came out to PNC Park, a record number of people who came out to PNC Park in 2015. The team won 98 games. The season fell short in the disappointment of the wild card and Jake Arrieta of the Cubs. If maybe it's a different pitcher or a different team, we could be talking about the world champion Pittsburgh Pirates of 2015. But that's neither here nor there at the moment. The real nitty-gritty of this situation is that the Pirates did not deliver on the good faith of their fans, and they continued to say that, well, we'll be reasonable here. We'll continue to hang way back in terms of payroll spending. And now the Pirates have dropped way back. And they'll say that it's because you didn't turn out over the last 3 years. But I say it's not the chicken that came first. It's the egg in this situation. It's not that you didn't turn out. You did turn out when the Pirates were good, when they were, it looked like, on the rise as a team that was going to be able to defy the odds in MLB, to defy the lack of a salary cap, to defy the small market nature of Pittsburgh. And no matter what you may say, you could quibble and say, well, it's more of a medium-sized market. It's the 22nd biggest market in America. And when you factor in the fact that New York and LA and Chicago have 2 teams each, yeah, the Pirates are what, 25th, 26th in terms of market size in MLB? So, yeah, they're a small market. There's no need to dance around that issue or gloss that issue. So there are legit excuses. But when the Pirates didn't even go a little bit outside their comfort zone in 15 into 16 and maybe 16 into 17 to try to get that magic back and spend a little bit more in free agency, that's when so many of you checked out. Because for so long, you heard that if we win and you turn out, we will continue to boost payroll. And yes, payroll was boosted in the literal sense. And I've talked about this before on this show. Payroll went up in the raw sense, but it didn't go up that much in terms of ranking. The Pirates never got to where the Kansas City Royals got to, for instance, in 2015, where they spent, I believe, $125 million or somewhere in that range. They were middle of the pack in baseball. The Pirates never got above 20th. They never got above 22nd, I believe, in relation to their peers in Major League payroll spending in a given season. And now, look at them now. They're going to drop down to, it looks like, even under $80 million. They could be 29th or even 30th by the end of the season, depending on how things go and if they sell off more players, if they're not in contention by midseason and the MLB trade season. So what's going on here? The Pirates have pulled so far back, and their arguments, while they make sense literally, and again, I go to the literal sense, that's what the Pirates don't get. It's about a spiritual deficit as much as it is a logical deficit here. And I'll give them that the logic doesn't dictate, and I've talked about this with Alan Saunders on this show in the past, or a frequent guest of ours here. And I respect Alan's intellect and his argument in this way, where he says, well, if you're Bob Nutting or if you're the Pirates ownership group, why would you shell out for talent? But now, especially with the way that teams aren't paying for free agents at all, as Rob Biertemple of the Athletic put it this weekend in his coverage of Pirate Fest, the Pirates could go out and sign either Bryce Harper or Manny Machado, one of the twin jewels of this free agent market that hasn't percolated at all. We're now getting close to February, and basically no one signed. The Pirates could sign one of these guys and still stay under $100 million, which would be lower than their 2016 payroll when they had a losing season, when, as I mentioned, they didn't keep pace with their peers in Major League Baseball. So all these arguments that Neil Huntington and Frank Coonelly make in front of the audience, that they make in the press year-round, where they say, well, spending doesn't guarantee winning. Well, we know that. We're not stupid. I think people understand that intuitively. All those years you had the Yankees spending a ton, and they didn't win. Well, they won, literally. They maybe got over 82 wins in a season, but they weren't winning World Series. This was the last decade I'm talking about, before they got their farm system up and running. No Pirates fan, or at least no half-intelligent Pirates fan. There are plenty of them out there. Baseball breeds intelligent fans. It's the nature of the game. But no half-smart Pirates fan realizes or thinks that just spending on free agents would be enough to win. You have to have the internal development. And the Pirates have gotten a lot of that right. Their starting rotation, as their pitching coach Ray Searage said down at minicamp a couple of weeks ago, it's pretty darn good. And there is a bedrock there. They went out and traded for Chris Archer last year. Loved the move. Thought it was nice and aggressive. But there's always that missing piece there, especially in this offseason where no one's spending. There are values to be had, but beyond Lonnie Chisenhall, the buy low signing they got from the Cleveland Indians after they let him go. So there's that disconnect. And it feels like, in the way that Coonelly and Huntington argue about why they do things the way they do, how they have as much passion, if not more passion, than most fans in bringing a World Series back to Pittsburgh. I don't doubt their commitment in that way. I don't doubt their want to. Everyone wants to win, right? But as Bob Knight, the legendary basketball coach, once said, it's not the will to win that's important. Everybody has that. It's the will to prepare to win. And the Pirates don't have that little bit, or you could say it's a lot, in fact. They don't have that one aspect where they're willing to take a chance financially. And I don't put this on Coonelly and Huntington. And in a lot of ways, it's unfair to put all your ire on those two gentlemen, or the Pirates front office in general, or even Clint Hurdle, which I know he gets a lot of criticism. He's not perfect, but I think he's better than most Major League managers. The team chairman, Bob Nutting, is the guy that signs the checks at the end of the day, and he has Coonelly there to speak for him. He has, in many ways, Neil Huntington there to speak for him, because Neil continues to be employed by the Pirates, so we can assume that he is being trusted as the face of the baseball operations side of things by Bob Nutting and by the board that runs the Pirates. And for the second straight year, Nutting was nowhere to be found in these Q&A sessions. At least, if you're going to say that we're just going to play it extremely close to the vest, we're going to play it prudently, we're going to run this like a strict business, even though sports teams aren't really businesses if you look at it in a lot of different ways, and we can get into that in maybe a future episode. But even if I'm going to run this team in such a heartless, bloodless way, not putting my skin in the game in terms of taking a risk, if I'm not going to be that team spokesman year-round like a Mark Cuban or a Jerry Jones in other sports, if I'm not going to really show any kind of demonstrable passion in baseball besides the fact that my family has owned this team for many, many years, at the very least, he can get out in front of the fans at these Q&A sessions and take a few bullets, take a few slings and arrows alongside his good and loyal soldiers in Huntington and Coonelly and Hurdle. So that's part of what rubs me the wrong way. It's not all about finances. It's not all about, as I mentioned, the spiritual side of the argument, the fact that fans pour their heart and soul into this and they deserve for their team to take a chance, to take a step. Heck, as an entertainment entity, it makes sense to take a step and to take a chance, right? Not to be stagnant. Can you imagine trying to sell Pirates season tickets right now? Can you imagine trying to run social media or be a part of the marketing team with the Pirates? Unless it's an absolute diehard or someone like myself who is an unabashed baseball junkie. And yeah, I still pull for the Pirates because I love the sport and I enjoy going to games. They have me. They're not going to lose me necessarily, but they are going to lose a lot of that passion that maybe I once had. And I know that I'm not alone in that. In fact, I feel like I'm one of the ones who's been the least affected by the way they've run their business. And even I concede that I'm nowhere near as excited about Pirates season as I used to be, and nowhere near as excited about baseball season as I used to be. And the way things are run here from that, as I mentioned, I think I called it a bloodless perspective. They don't put themselves on the line. They don't even say for 1 year, yeah, we're going to spend a little bit more here, and we're going to give it a shot and deliver some good faith to you. All these arguments, the Pirates are run basically in bad faith, even if they're run in a good, solid financial way to maximize profits and to minimize risk from that side of it. So they're a good business, but that's about all that they're good at from the front office side of it. And I don't get how, the excuse from the Pirates this weekend was that Bob Nutting had a prior agreement or a prior commitment, I should say, on the West Coast, and he couldn't make it. If you're the owner of a team, make it to your fan fest. Come on, especially if you're Bob Nutting, if you're the chairman of the board here. I know last year he was actually at PNC Park. He was in Pittsburgh for the event, but he didn't go up on stage. And come on, you're worth millions of dollars. What's it gonna do to you to be yelled at a little bit by your fans? And they deserve to have that moment of catharsis, don't you think? So all this adds up to the bad faith way that the Pirates are run. There isn't that return, and I think fans have gotten that, and I think the Pirates don't get that they have lost a segment of the fan base. Once that 15 peak hit and they went back down and they didn't really push and take a chance, they lost people maybe for good, or at least barring some sort of a dramatic ownership shift or a dramatic approach to how they're building the team. Barring that, they're just not going to get these fans back. So I don't see any kind of way out of this unless there is an ownership coup among the board members. I don't know if that's going to happen. You have to have the capital to invest in that, and it would take a lot to believe in this baseball market right now. But that's more the fault of the Pirates than it is of their fans. So don't blame the fans in this case. Don't blame Major League Baseball as much. Don't throw these arguments out there that, well, spending won't guarantee winning. Well, no, it won't, but it would go a long way toward, one, increasing your odds, and two, getting your fans back involved and getting them back invested in your entertainment entity. This is a totally different thing. This is not like running a newspaper. This is not like running a radio station, and the Pirates just don't get it. And what we saw at Pirate Fest with the absence of Bob Nutting at the event continues to perpetuate my belief that they will continue to not get it, at least for the foreseeable future. That's the first period on Geiks Got Game. Thanks for tuning in. I look forward to your input on social media. Twitter and Facebook are the two that I look at during the show. And as I mentioned, just search my name, Matt Gajtka. G-A-J-T-K-A is how you spell it. The last name, Matt, is very basic, M-A-T-T. I will return after this break, and we'll talk about something positive. thank goodness, the life-affirming nature. That's right. That's a strong adjective, but I called it life-affirming this weekend in San Jose. If you're a hockey fan, you had to love a lot of what you saw, especially three things, and I'll touch on all three when we come back on Geiks Got Game. And we're back inside the Mr. Smalls Theater. I say we, me, Matt Geika, and he, Brian Crawford. Brian Crawford's coming up next, in fact, through the magic of radio. He'll be joining you for River Talk at 10 a.m. live. And as I was asked on Facebook, there are ways to access this programming after the fact, of course, even though we roll live on Facebook and on the website at riversedgepgh.com and the 24/7 audio stream. You can find us in podcast format. All the places that you look for podcasts, Google Play, Apple, etc., etc. And once the SoundCloud page populates, then you can find it there, and it'll update on your phone or your device. And also, you can find just the media player, the SoundCloud player, on riversedgepgh.com. Just go to the individual, right at the top of the screen at the menu bar, you can go to the individual shows and connect with our programming that way. So if you can't catch it live, well, first of all, shame on you. But if you can't catch it live, I understand. Of course, everyone's busy, and you can access it on demand. And again, every show that I'll be doing from this point forward for the foreseeable future will be on Monday. So you'll have that to start your week. You're welcome for that. Of course, I like it better, and I hope you do too. Going to be back in Pittsburgh, as I mentioned at the top of the program, coldest week of the year. But I did at least get away from it all in one way this past weekend. I worked for the Robert Morris men's varsity hockey team, and we were up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, for a series against the Air Force Academy, 7,200 feet above sea level at the Air Force Academy, 6,000-something in the Springs, as they call it out there, just south of Denver on I-25. And I really, really enjoy Colorado. And even though the altitude can get to me, it's some dry air, it causes all kind of havoc with my sinuses and sleeping habits. And, well, if you ever try to go for a run or exercise at that elevation after growing up around here, yeah, it's more of a struggle. So there are those aspects of it. And it was probably just as cold as it was here, if not maybe a little bit more cold on some of the nights up in the Rocky Mountains. But it's a completely different atmosphere up there in a literal sense, as I'm mentioning, and also metaphorically speaking. I love the spirit of the Old West, and that really is the frontier, the old frontier from when our ancestors in this country made their way across the continent. So I really enjoy that part of it. It's just totally different from around here, and I brought in my Team USA Olympic Training Center mug. Almost all the USOC-affiliated Team USA programs are housed up there in Colorado Springs, so that's an added benefit there in addition to the mountains, the landscape, the hiking, all the outdoorsy stuff you can do up there. That's also a tourist attraction. So if you do get a chance to head up to the Rocky Mountain State, I would definitely suggest don't bypass Colorado Springs, just about an hour drive south of Denver. And I'm still rehydrating, getting the water back into my body, so yeah, the voice was a little questionable waking up this morning. I was hoping I was going to be able to project for you. Feeling better and better as this hour goes along, though. And, well, speaking of hockey, I was on assignment, so to speak, for the RMU men's hockey team. Don't ask about the two games. We couldn't buy a goal up there, so we lost both coming home to the island this weekend, hoping for some home cooking. But I did keep track of the NHL All-Star game and the NHL All-Star festivities, and I was very heartened by what I saw in three different ways. And, well, one of them is rather obvious if you are a Penguins fan and a fan of Sidney Crosby. And, by the way, the Penguins are back in action. This is the 28th, right? Yeah, they play the New Jersey Devils at home this evening. So their NHL-mandated week off is over with. The NHL All-Star break, of course, is over with, too. So they had a little bit of a longer break than most teams. But to see Sidney Crosby, despite missing the skills competition, that was a shame due to an illness, and just hiding out in his hotel in San Jose at the start of the weekend, to see him come out on Saturday and dominate in the 3-on-3 tournament, which the NHL definitely gets right. It's such a better product compared to what it was a few years back when they tried to do a 5-on-5 three-period game. Now you have four different teams, so to speak, comprising the four different divisions in the NHL, and they play in a mini tournament. And it's still not the highest competitively, it's not the highest competition, I would say, or level of competition. They don't lay it out on the line, I'll put it that way. But it is more interesting with the open ice and players willing to try some different things. You saw some terrific goals And guys taking chances, guys having fun. And with the open ice, I think players are motivated to skate at least a little bit harder. At least that's the working theory. And it's just a different look for hockey. And to see 3-on-3 full-time for an entire afternoon, it's enjoyable. Sidney Crosby certainly enjoyed it. 4 goals, 4 assists in the mini-tournament. The Metropolitan Division won the whole thing. And he got a lovely new Honda in addition to the NHL All-Star Game MVP award. One of just a handful of players to have won the All-Star MVP, the regular season MVP, and the playoff MVP. And of course, Sid has a couple of Hart trophies and a couple of Conn Smythe trophies to his credit, in addition to the All-Star Game MVP. That's the most trivial of all of them, right? But it does complete that that hockey hat trick, if you will, for some of the best players to ever lace them up. And so Sid got that done, and I guess he can check that off his list. But what I loved after the game, he got the usual softball fawning questions, like what's it like to be recognized in front of your peers, that sort of thing. Easy stuff at the All-Star Game. And not that I'm saying it should be hardcore journalism there, but yeah, you can expect that sort of thing. Another round of praise for Crosby. Maybe it's getting older for some, but for me, it doesn't get old because Sid himself is getting older. And as he put it, he's just happy to be in the conversation for the best player in the world. When he falls out of that conversation, then he'll start to get a little bit worried. But as for right now, he's still one of the guys. He may not be the guy, and I've discussed it here in other formats previously. I think Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey now, and I don't think it's that much of a debate, but of course it still is being debated out there. But the bottom line is Sid is still right up there with the top-of-the-line guys, with your Austin Matthewses and Connor McDavids. And, yeah, you could put Alex Ovechkin still up there because of the way he scores goals. It's the most valuable commodity in the game, and so it's hard to take him out of that picture too. So, as he put it, as long as he's in the conversation, I think we don't have much to worry about, and he is still very much in that conversation as he showed. So if you're a Penguins fan, if you're a fan of big-time talent in this sport, then you had to love how that panned out, especially for a guy like Crosby who hasn't always made it to the All-Star Game because of either Olympics or minor injuries that he decided to punt on the festivities in the past. So it's just great to see him out there having fun, and it's weird to see Sid in a situation where the competitiveness isn't ramped up to the nth degree, but I think it's also enjoyable to see him outside of that normal area where we see him plying his trade. Perhaps in a much bigger deal than that, though, we saw for the first time in the skills competition over this past weekend a female hockey player compete and actually hold her own very well. Kendall Coyne-Schofield, who plays for the Minnesota Whitecaps of the National Women's Hockey League, the NWHL, which continues to make advances and flirtations with the Pittsburgh market. We'll see how that goes. But Kendall Coyne, as you might know her better from the U.S. national team, we got to see her play, in fact, down at the Army Island Sports Center a few years ago. I got to call a game involving Kendall Coyne when she was playing for Northeastern University against Robert Morris in Division I pucks. So she's been on the rise for a while, but she has never gotten this much publicity. And maybe it's an indictment of our current sports culture where she had to compete in a men's event to get this level of attention. And yes, she won a gold medal for the U.S. women's team last year. But for her to be focused in on and her primary quality, which is speed, to be thrown into the spotlight, that was something new. And it felt like something totally different as well. So when we saw Kendall Coyne replace the Avalanche captain Nathan MacKinnon in the fastest skater event this past Friday in San Jose, California, that was a watershed event. And to see Kendall Coyne go out there and finish second in the event, there's a list of players that she beat that I'll read off to you right now. Cam Atkinson of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Matthew Barzal of the New York Islanders, Jack Eichel, former number 2 overall pick of the Buffalo Sabres, Miro Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars, Clayton Keller, former Rookie of the Year with the Arizona Coyotes, Elias Pettersson, probably this year's Rookie of the Year coming up with the Vancouver Canucks. Coyne-Schofield, finished ahead of all of those players, behind only Connor McDavid, the aforementioned best player in the world, trademark. McDavid beat her out by a second, but to see a woman hockey player go out there and hold her own and just soar around the rink, it was impressive to watch. If you like athleticism, you had to appreciate the way that she got around and picked them up and put them down, as they say, and completed her lap in 14.3 seconds, finishing just behind one of the NHL All-Stars. It's not just run-of-the-mill NHL players. These are the best of the best. maybe not necessarily the fastest of the fastest, but I think McDavid is probably the fastest player in hockey right now. And Kendall Coyne Schofield beat everybody but Connor McDavid. So to see that felt significant. And then on top of that, we also saw Brianna Decker, another member of the U.S. women's national team that has recently won a gold medal and beating Canada out in South Korea this past winter. She maybe, I put it to that qualifier, maybe won the NHL passing competition at the skills event. There was some wonkiness with the start of the countdown clock, but according to that clock, she beat out the winner of the NHL side of the event, the Edmonton Oilers' Leon Draisaitl, who tore up the passing obstacle course in 1:09. Apparently, if the timer is to be trusted, maybe it wasn't, but at the very least, Brianna Decker was very close to being the best of the group. So you see the skill of these players put on display, and no, they're not as physical as the men, but why does that matter? In this era of hockey, I think it matters less than ever with the way that the game is turning towards speed and skill. As you see, the women hockey players have just as much speed as skill, and skill in some ways, as their male counterparts. And maybe hockey is the sport where women can one day compete alongside. I'm not sure that it's going to happen anytime soon. I'm not sure it's going to happen in some kind of a huge wave of talent coming in. But I'd always thought that perhaps baseball was the sport where women could possibly compete alongside the men the best at the highest level of the game. Just because if you're a good pitcher, even though you might not throw 95 miles an hour, if you're a good pitcher, I think you can fool even the best hitters in baseball, because hitting is about timing and pitching is about disrupting timing, as many people have said over the years, many people much smarter than me when it comes to that sport. So I always felt that because there isn't that physical nature, there isn't tackling or checking in baseball, that women could compete in that sport. Women could compete in Major League Baseball, but maybe it's hockey. And if you can avoid getting checked, like, say, some of the smaller players in the game today, like a Mitch Marner, one of the real stars in the game. He plays for Toronto. He's not that much taller and heavier than, say, Brianna Decker or Kendall Coyne Schofield. So I don't think it's that big of a disconnect. But also, it doesn't have to be about the women competing with the men. It's just about the women getting their just due. And I think with the rise of the NWHL in this country, of the CWHL in Canada, the talks between those two leagues that they might merge, I think we're finally seeing women get their just due in this sport. And we've seen the WNBA, of course, continue on for the past 20 years in the sport of basketball. And subsidized by the NBA, I think that was a smart move to grow the game in that way and create new fans and to create new passion in the sport and to give these athletes of a different gender an opportunity to compete and to share in some of the spoils of victory, so to speak, of making it to the top of their chosen profession. But don't sleep on hockey. After what we saw this past weekend, that was highly enjoyable. And as I said, life-affirming for me as someone who wants to see the people who deserve to get the credit and the spotlight get more of the credit and the spotlight. And women's hockey is different from men's. There's no real checking isn't a part of the game. There is body contact. It's more like basketball in that way, where there is contact, but it's not a collision sport. But we don't even have to line those up and compare like they're apples to apples. We can say, well, this apple is great and this orange is great. And this past weekend was a step toward doing that. And finally, the glow puck was back. Not really in the NHL, but if you watched the All-Star game, or the tournament, I suppose you want to call it now, to be more specific, on Saturday, you saw NBC introduce a puck tracking graphic in addition to player tracking information that the NHL is going to try to roll out next season, and we'll see where that goes in terms of analyzing the game and making it maybe more easily digestible for the viewing public. I was not a fan of the glow puck back in the day. I found it pretty distracting and maybe a little hokey with the way that Fox added glowing red tail to shots. It was a little much. But the way that this shadow, if you will, followed the puck around the ice, and you can find the video clips on YouTube or on NHL.com out there. The way this shadow followed the puck around the ice, I thought it was very helpful, especially when it came to seeing where shots missed the net. It's not always the easiest to tell, even in high definition, where pucks go. And even if you are a storied, a very experienced hockey fan, And even if you're a staunch traditionalist, I think you have to say that added something. And I think augmented reality is the future of sports broadcasting. And I think this is a very effective and unobtrusive way to do it. And I know that there are some out there who say, well, if you're a real hockey fan, you don't need a puck tracker to see where it went. I'll admit, like I just said, I don't always know where the puck went. It's tough to tell. So to add that for the viewing public and to make it, as I felt, as much a part of the scenery as possible, it's just amazing to see what technology makes possible these days. So I'd like to see the folks at the NHL on NBC and the NHL in general encourage their rights holders, their media holders, to include more of that technology. I know it's not cheap. I know it's very expensive. I know maybe you can't do it for every game, but at least for the National Game of the Week, I'd like to see them try it, and I'd like to see them, just in general, go a little bit outside of their comfort zones and make some different moves to try to make this sport more accessible. Because those of us who love it know that it's the best sport on earth. Those of us who don't need some help getting over that hump and getting into it in that way. And I think that that new type of glow puck, that different version of puck tracking technology for the broadcast side was really innovative and really cool. And personally, I loved it. Let me know what you think on Twitter, on Facebook. I'll take another break here, come back for the third period of Gike Scott Game. We are going to, continue on with the generalist theme here because, as I said, not a lot of games going on right now to discuss, but hey, that's the way we like it here at the River's Edge and at Gike Scott Game. I'm going to describe my complete 180-degree turn on the New England Patriots over the past 2 decades and why I think I've gotten to that point. I think age has something to do with it. I think just perspective and the sheer passage of time and the addition of memories and the appreciation of how difficult it is to do what they've done. It's changed me from a Pats hater to not a lover, but definitely an appreciator. And I'll elaborate further, and I want to know if you're maybe more like me or if you're a staunch, still a subscriber to the fact that the Pats are everything that's evil in pro sports. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that on the other side of this timeout on Gike's Got Game. Hello and welcome back to Millvale, Pennsylvania, just up the Allegheny River from downtown Pittsburgh. I'm Matt Geica. This is my show, Gike's Got Game, on the River's Edge. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com, and you can find this show streaming live on Facebook as well, on my page and also our station page. Brian Crawford's been alongside producing the show, and I actually forgot. If we can rewind the tape back to the first segment, I was railing against the Pirates' bad faith method in operating. I forgot my least favorite quote from Neil Huntington this past weekend. And to preface this, I will say that I'm a fan of Neil Huntington, the person. I also admire the fact that he could have left for the San Francisco Giants this offseason. Apparently, he got a job offer there, as reported, and as he said himself in the public eye. He could have gone. He could have gotten a much higher payroll. He could have gotten much bigger support from the people above him over there and tried to rebuild that team into a World Series contender. But he's stuck around here, so I appreciate that idea and trying to finish the job, so to speak, here in Pittsburgh. But his talking points are just, they grate on my ears. They feel like they're insulting my intelligence, and I know that I'm not alone in that. And as my former colleague at Pirates Prospects, Tim Williams, tweeted out, the quote from Huntington about signing free agents, and I'll read it to you, in fact. This thing that he said is completely ridiculous. Quote, when you sign a free agent, you have automatically outbid everybody to get him 95 to 99% of the time. You have theoretically overpaid to get that free agent, end quote. Well, yeah, that's how free agency works. That's how the open market works. You may value someone at a certain dollar amount due to your internal evaluations, but if you want to get that player, then you probably have to go 10%, 20%, 30% above in order to beat out everybody else. That's just how the market works. That is not exclusive to baseball. That is not some big revelation from on high, Mr. Huntington. That is just basic economics. That's capitalism. That's the way that this thing goes. And if you're acting like that's some thing that should hold you back from signing a free agent, well, you're mistaken, because if everybody in your eyes, quote-unquote, overpays for a free agent, then no one overpays for a free agent, as I just tweeted out during the break. It doesn't make any sense from a logical perspective. And usually, if nothing else, Neil Huntington is logical in the way that he talks. That does frustrate some people, including me sometimes, because there's more to sports and life than logic. But in this way, he's not even being logical. This is not even, this should be scrapped. This little quote, this idea that you have to overpay to get a free agent should be thrown into the trash bin and never used again, because it doesn't make any sense from either side of it. From the spiritual side of the table, as I discussed in the opening segment of this show, or from the logical, cold-blooded side of the table. Either way, it doesn't add up. Anyway, well, speaking of cold-blooded, many of you believe that the New England Patriots, who are competing in their 9th Super Bowl of this century, since the century turned, are what's wrong with pro sports. They are the cheaters. They are the ones who dominate, perhaps due to untoward means, and they have at times been caught for their untoward means in achieving their goals. Well, at least in terms of the spying controversy from the previous decade and right at the start of this Patriots, I hate to even call it a dynasty. It's almost like 2 or 3 separate dynasties, or at least 2 separate ones. The first half of the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era, and the second half of that era. They've been 2 almost completely different makeups of teams, but neither here nor there. As I was saying, there's at least one significant pockmark or blemish, or you might even say a black mark on their record. The deflation of the footballs in the title game against the Colts a few years ago, I'm not sure that's ever been definitively proven. So I'm going to leave that one aside and not really discuss that one. But that did add, though, to the mystique of them being the bad boys of pro sports. And if you're a Patriots fan, then you probably like that. You probably treasure that, especially if you're from Boston. You have that chronic prosecution or persecution complex anyway. So you feel like the world's against you no matter what. So that does feed into that whole motif in New England. But getting back to around here, I think that, yeah, most of you are still Patriots haters, and I don't think you would apologize for being Patriots haters at this moment, or at any moment since Belichick took over and since Tom Brady came to the forefront. Really, the Steelers are as much responsible for the start of the Patriots dynasty as any team, because the Pats went through them for their first Super Bowl, as I don't have to remind any of you out there, and I don't have to remind myself either. That was a very traumatic period for young Matt Geica as a Pittsburgh sports fan. In those formative years, I saw the Steelers lose to the Patriots twice on their home field when they were favored in AFC championship games. The 2004 game was especially tough, as I've often told people. That's the worst sports moment of my life, the 2004 AFC championship game. The Steelers, quarterbacked by rookie Ben Roethlisberger, and really powered by an unbelievable defense and a pretty good offense, too. One that got a little more erratic as the season went along and maybe wasn't as bulletproof as it had appeared earlier in the year. But that was an awesome season. They went 15-1 in the regular year. They sneaked by the Jets in the first round of the playoffs. Maybe shouldn't have won that game. Many people forget that one. But they did make it past after getting the bye, and they made it to the AFC Championship game. They faced off against the Pats, the defending Super Bowl champions. They were the defending champions. That's right. They had won their second Super Bowl in 2 years or 3 years the previous season. So they were going for 3-4. Were the Pats. Pittsburgh still favored. The Patriots won, 44-20 or something like that. It wasn't even close. It was a master class in performance there. And, well, you could say that they got the benefit of some illicit videos and some illicit intelligence in that case. But still, that was the most painful moment for me as a sports fan. I'm not sure anything tops that because of my intensity of passion at that moment. I was 19 years old. So it's right in that sweet spot where sports means everything and there isn't much going on in your life otherwise. At least there wasn't for me. Maybe that speaks more poorly to me than it does to anything else. But moving on from that, that was the moment that that hurt me the most. I remember thinking about that game for months afterward and how much it still stung. And I know for many of you, maybe it does still sting in that way. I'm not going to judge you for that fact. Your passion is why I've made a career in sports and why I have been motivated to work in this field. But since then, it's been a gradual move back to the center and maybe toward the other way, toward the Patriots side of things because of just their longevity. And as I get older, I realize how difficult it is to maintain a level in anything, let alone a highly competitive professional sport where a salary cap and a system is set up to prevent you from winning year in and year out. And not only do the Patriots win in the regular season year in and year out and win the AFC East, you could say it's a crap division. It really has been a crap division in a lot of ways. But if you put the Steelers in the Patriots spot, you just swap their positions in the AFC North and East, respectively. Would the Steelers have won as much as the Patriots have? I don't think they have, because the Pats haven't shown an ability to, or the Steelers, rather, haven't shown an ability to keep their focus the way the Patriots have. How many times do you see the Pats have an off game against a team they should beat? They always take care, or almost always take care, of the Bills, of the Dolphins when they should, of the Jets when they should. There are some exceptions, of course. It's sports. It's human experience. There's going to be some erratic situations, and you're not going to be able to be a robot and perform at the best of your ability every time. But the Patriots do it better than anybody in pro sports, and it's a credit to their leadership, even if you don't like the men at the top of the food chain. And we could say they have some questionable traits, no doubt, in Belichick and Brady and Robert Kraft at the top of the organization as the owner. But overall, from a performance standpoint, I just have to admire it. And now, in their 9th Super Bowl, going for their 6th victory in the championship game in the past 18 seasons, I just have to say I am in no way pulling for the upset to happen. I'm rooting for history here. I want to see this team. I want to see how far this Patriots team can go. So I'm actually behind them, and I'm not alone in my house, because my wife Jillian is a big Michigan football fan, University of Michigan I'm talking about, so you know where this is going. She's a Tom Brady fan from way back in the day. So, and she's from Michigan, so she doesn't really have a strong pro football allegiance growing up in this era, or even previous eras. The Lions haven't given her any reason to really get into pro football, that's for sure. So she's been more of a Patriots fan, if she is a fan of any team. So as she and I host some neighbors from the neighborhood up in Westview for a nice little Super Bowl party coming up on Sunday, it's going to be maybe the rarest of households in the Pittsburgh area where both of us are going to be hoping that the Rams can't pull off the upset. I want to see the Patriots win again. I want to see how far they can take this thing, because there are lessons to be taken from this. There are inspirations to be taken from this for me, to my daily life. And you see the way they go about their business. The one part about the Patriots way that they've at least shared in the public eye that I think is really admirable is do your job. That's always been Bill Belichick's thing. And I think that applies in life. And that's the way I'll wrap up this week's show. If you just do your job, if you focus on what you're doing and not snipe at this person or that person in your organization or out there in the world, if you do your job as a human being in your house, as a husband or a wife or as a father, as a mother, as a brother, as a sister, et cetera, if you take care of what you are assigned to take care of, I think you'll be satisfied with the results. And I'm not saying that you can't be a team player. I'm not saying that you just put yourself in your own little silo and you don't look around and observe and look for ways for things to improve out in the real world. But I think so much of human nature dictates that we worry about things that are outside of our control. And the one thing the Patriots do, and they have done since the turn of the century, is worry about what they can control, be mentally disciplined, and do their jobs the right way. And that's taking care of everything. And no matter what you may think about the Patriots, you have to concede that they do that better than anybody out there. And again, it'll be on display on the biggest stage when there are so many distractions. Yes, they've lost a couple of Super Bowls. Yes, maybe they've won a couple that could have gone either way. The past two come to mind against the Falcons, way down in the first half against Atlanta, and the final drive for the Seahawks in the Super Bowl that the Patriots won a few years back when Seattle couldn't punch it in and win the game. Yes, those went their way, but you could also say that a couple of the big games against the Giants could have gone the Patriots' way easily. So it's about putting yourself in position. It's about getting there, and it's about doing your job. And that's what I admire most about the Pats, and that's why I become, maybe not a Pats fan, but a part of their admiration society on the down low. It's tough to do that in Pittsburgh. Of course, now I've aired all that dirty laundry here, so you know what I'm all about. Again, let me know what you think on social media, and I look forward to talking with you on the other side of the Super Bowl coming up next Monday. I'll return to the studio, 9 a.m., live, and after the fact on the riversedgepgh.com. For Brian Crawford, for all of you out there, for tuning into this show each and every week. This is Matt Geica saying goodbye. God bless. Have a great week. Remember to do your job, and I'll talk to you in 7 days' time from Mr. Small's Theater in Millvale.